I married the school bad boy I'd crushed on since sophomore year, and the moment his first love stepped off the plane, he bolted. The man who never lost his cool sprinted for a cab to the airport and left me standing on a rain-slick street half a world away. While a stranger pressed a knife to my ribs, he was wrapping both arms around the girl he thought he'd lost. Rosalie was Soren's angel. The only rose that had ever bloomed in the wasteland of his teenage years. He still read the same English poems she used to dog-ear. He kept her bunny hair tie in a velvet pouch at the back of his drawer. The sanctum he'd forbidden me to enter had her tutu pinned to the wall like a relic. Funniest of all, it took him 7 whole days to remember I existed. By then I was dead. They never even found my body. Later he knelt on the dock, clutching my shredded, blood-soaked skirt, crying like a little boy who'd broken his favorite toy. Too late. 1. The day Rosalie came home, Soren and I were supposed to be on our honeymoon. Calling it a honeymoon was generous. He'd flown overseas for a takeover, and I'd been tacked onto the itinerary like an extra suitcase. Her call came while we were listening to an old man in a waistcoat saw out of a Vivaldi aria on the violin. Wind lifted the hem of my dress and glued it to his coat so we looked sewn together. I tilted my head, studying the clean, ruthless line of his profile, and felt my heart swell until it hurt. 6 years ago I'd wanted exactly this, the boy no teacher could tame, now standing beside me in a foreign sunset. The song wasn't over when his phone buzzed. He answered, and the ice in his eyes cracked into something wild and glittering. "I'll come," he said, voice shaking. "Wait for me." When he hung up, his breath came fast. "Sam." I blinked. "But we agreed. Dylan, don't be dramatic," he snapped, the words whipping across my face. I flinched. The look he gave me could have frosted the river. He'd never raised his voice before. My heart folded in on itself, a tiny paper crane dropped into a glass of water. "Rosalie?" I whispered, the name tasting like rust. "If she still matters, why marry me?" He didn't answer. A long exhale. "She's just someone I used to know. Stay, enjoy the city. I have to go." No backward glance. His strides ate the pavement, decisive, eager. He left me on a corner I couldn't pronounce, rain starting like a timer going off. The pastel facades dissolved into gray. I stood there, luggage at my feet, 6 years of devotion outclassed by 3 syllables, "I'm back." Tears arrived hot and stupid, I wiped them away with the heel of my hand. If I was this easy to discard, I'd never been essential. Fine. Divorce. I'd fly home and sign the papers. That night, before I could, I died. 2. Death wasn't the blackout I'd expected. I opened my eyes in a hospital corridor 3,000 miles west, weightless, unseen. Soren barreled past orderlies, coat flapping like torn wings. He shoved open a door at the end of the hall. Inside, Rosalie lay against white pillows, fragile as parchment. He stopped on the threshold, knuckles white on the handle. "You came," she croaked, tears welling. He moved to the foot of the bed. "What happened?" "Fought with my parents. Crashed the car after I landed." She bit her lip. "Heard you got married." "Yeah." His voice scraped the floor. "I let go first." "Congratulations." A trembling smile. "I'll fetch a nurse," he said, already pivoting. She lurched out of bed and plastered herself to his back. "Don't leave. Please. I'm scared you'll disappear." Her sobs soaked through his shirt. He hesitated, then folded her into his arms the way you cradle something priceless you've dropped and miraculously not shattered. I watched from the ceiling, hollowed out. This version of him soft, pleading had never existed for me. Day 1 of being dead, my husband rocking his first love to sleep, no idea my body was wedged under a bridge piling, water slapping against bloated skin. She asked if he'd stay. He said yes. He spent the night in that plastic chair, fingers stroking her hair until dawn. They moved her to the VIP suite the next morning. He asked Young to bring his clothes, his cologne, even the stupid espresso machine. When she murmured she missed his cooking, he bought groceries and spent the afternoon burning pans until the risotto looked edible. I sat on the windowsill, knees to chin, watching the only man I'd ever loved stir dinner for a ghost. He never called me. Not once. If I could rewind to that dusk by the river, I'd tell 16-year-old me to run. The cloudburst kept drumming, current dragging what was left of me toward deeper, darker water. 3. Soren's parents died when he was 8, his grandparents shipped him off to boarding school with a trust fund and a warning not to embarrass the family name. By 15 he was mythic, beautiful, brutal, always the first to throw a punch and the last to apologize. We should never have overlapped. Then junior year schedules dropped. Pick your own seat day. No one picked me. The counselor sighed and parked me at the single desk in back row exile. After the final bell I stayed, forehead on my arms, crying because the world felt one size fits all and I was the wrong size. I didn't know Soren was asleep under a hoodie in the corner until he kicked his chair back and stalked over. Quit the waterworks, he growled, rapping on my desk. I don't have a lab partner. That's why you've skipped dinner 3 days? He rolled his eyes. Up. I shot to vertical, heartbeat slamming. He hooked a foot under my desk and punted it 3 meters, it crashed against his own. Now you do. Sit. Sunset slammed through the windows, painting his cheekbones copper. My face went radioactive. 4. He started calling me Rabbit. Because I startled at everything. Winter break ended on his birthday. I used red envelope money to buy a snow globe cottage, tiny house, perpetual storm, warm lamplight inside, a boy on the couch with popcorn and a rabbit curled on the rug. Soren, happy birthday. I shoved the box at him, cheeks blazing. He stared like I'd handed him an asteroid. First present ever, he muttered, throat tight. Jace hollered from the door, yo, we rolling, or what? Busy. Get lost. Soren set the globe on his blotter, spun it, watched the fake snow whirl. Rabbit, Alex. A lopsided grin. I looked away so fast I nearly gave myself whiplash. He never noticed the bunny on the blanket. 5. Spring semester, tuition overdue, lunch lines turning into a hunger strike nobody wanted. I forged a note to Mom, lost my wallet, need $40. During gym I sprinted back to the classroom and slid the cash wrapped in a unicorn sticky note into the class treasurer's drawer. In bubbly font I'd practiced all night, for Soren's meal card. A tiny heart dotted the I. I was the only one who knew he skipped lunch to save the fee. I was also the only one who knew why his knuckles were always bruised, why he flinched when teachers said future, and why, years later, he'd leave his wife on a street corner the second that pass knocked. But right then I just wanted the boy who'd given me half his desk to eat something that wasn't shame. I didn't want Soren to know it was me, I was afraid it would make him uncomfortable. But Soren knew someone had helped him. He pinched that slip of paper between his fingers, and for several days his face was blank. Had I wounded his pride? I agonized over whether to explain. After days of restless thoughts, I finally scraped up the courage to come clean. Then, out of nowhere, Soren decided to chase Rosalie in the next class. Bro, why the sudden pursuit of Rosalie? You wouldn't even look at her before, Jay said, scratching his head. Don't ask. I'm dead set on her now. Soren drawled the words loud and lazy. I sat beside him, pen clenched so tight my knuckles ached, my mood plummeting. My vision blurred, I fought the watery gleam in my eyes. Still, a drop defied me, landing on the exam paper and blooming across the printed lines. 6. Rosalie had the grades, the face, the poise, the talent. One afternoon Soren and I carried English workbooks to the other building. We passed the conservatory studio, through the floor-to-ceiling glass we saw her. The girl's neck was long, her limbs fluid and free, like a graceful white swan. Almost possessed, I halted and instantly glanced at Soren beside me. He showed no reaction, his indifferent gaze slid over Rosalie. What, you want to bounce in there too? Soren cradled the stack of books with one arm and tapped my head with the other hand. I can't dance. So what? You're a bunny, you'd outjump them all. He teased lightly, lips curving as he tapped my forehead again. Spring sunlight spilled around us, a breeze lifted the hem of his jacket. That day the languid boy under the willow tree wore a heart-stopping smile. Later, they dated. One afternoon he came back with a volume of Byron. The guy in front flicked water from his hands, droplets hit the cover, and I reached to wipe them. Don't touch. Soren barked, smacking my hand away. Smack. I cradled my stinging hand and whispered, there was water, I wanted to wipe it. Sorry, Dylan. Realization flickered, and regret crossed his face. Soren stopped calling me Bunny. Around his wrist he wore the bunny hair tie he'd snatched from Rosalie. The delicate elastic left a thin red line on his skin. You like Byron's poems? Rosalie does, this is hers. At her name, Soren's eyes softened. He had Jace fetch a trash bag, swept everything from his desk in rough handfuls, and cleared the space. Bro, you're tossing all this? You sure you don't want to look again? Jace held the bag up. Nah, just junk. Soren answered without looking. Trash it? Soren grunted. Head still down, he carefully slid the poetry book into the drawer. I watched the snow globe cottage I'd given him for his birthday. Tossed in with the trash and discarded. 7. Their early romance was discovered by Rosalie's parents. Second semester of junior year, Rosalie transferred away. She told him to study hard and find her after the college entrance exam. From that day Soren studied like mad, frantically cramming everything he'd missed. Time galloped, Ellis arrived. I heard Rosalie had dumped him and gone overseas. I thought our paths would never cross again. But junior year of college I ran into him on campus. A suit jacket draped over his arm, his eyes distant, his aura refined. The wild boy had cooled into poised restraint. Long time no see. Some alumni and I started a project that partners with your school, he said. I was one of the student liaisons. 2 years zipped by. After graduation he gathered investors and launched a startup. Soren's instincts were razor-sharp, carving a path through the volatile market. Lured by the salary, I joined his company as an assistant, telling myself he was only my boss. Business meant banquets, and ferrying him home was normally the mail aide's job. But that day Young was on leave, so I drove Soren back. The car was silent. Soren leaned against the rear seat, eyes closed, lashes still. Thinking he was asleep, I hummed softly, oddly lighthearted. Something fun you want to share, a hoarse voice broke in. He'd been awake the whole time. It's my aunt's birthday, Mom sent a video of their party, looked happy, I said, flustered. Soren gave a low hum. Birthdays should be spent with family. He kneaded his temples, exhaustion soaking his words. At his building the engine died, he stepped out. For some reason the tall, handsome man's back looked lonely. I couldn't help calling after him. Soren, happy birthday to you too. I remembered today was also his birthday. He paused, then said Alex without turning. 8. Later I acquired a suitor who wanted dinner after work. In the garage, the mail aide about to accompany Soren teased, Dylan, you're all dolled up, got a boyfriend? Just dinner, I laughed, lips pressed in a shy smile. Beep beep. A Cayenne sounded its horn. The window slid down, revealing his angular face. His gaze swept me from head to toe, brows knit. He told Young to get in. Moon above the trees, dinner half done, my phone rang. Young said Soren was wasted, calling my name, refusing anyone else. I went to collect my boss. Finally. The CEO won't let me drive, Young sighed, opening the driver's door. Still catching my breath, I leaned in. Mr. Sterling, you asked for me? Soren lifted his head from the steering wheel, tie loose, 2 buttons undone, collarbones pale. Drunk, he blinked slowly. Take me home. He swung his long legs over and slid into the passenger seat. No choice, I became his chauffeur again. At his building I woke him. Sorry for dragging you away. Didn't ruin your date, did it? His eyes were bloodshot. No, it wasn't right anyway, I'm passing. Embarrassed, I added, I'll leave the keys and grab a cab. Wait. He caught my wrist, face suddenly close. Then how about considering me? Dead serious, breath hot with alcohol. Huh? I froze. Consider me, he repeated, lips brushing my ear. These years he'd never mentioned Rosalie. I thought he'd forgotten her. We got together. Cool on the surface, he was steady and thoughtful with me. Just minus the reckless fire of our teens. A little lost, I told myself he wasn't that impulsive kid anymore. This was enough. I thought we'd stay like that forever. 10. Soren cooked a spread. Night swallowed the city, the table brimmed with dishes. Rosalie, hair loose, skin porcelain, almond eyes wide, squealed, You remember I love sweet and sour ribs? I remember. Soren didn't eat, he opened wine and sipped. Across from her, he glanced at the neon outside, distracted. I drifted around the table, heartache almost numb. Soren's cooking was excellent. Yet in 6 years he'd barely entered the kitchen, only after I begged. Afterward he collected interest. Slow, searing kisses, hands pinning my waist, fierce and familiar. Jerk. It was never the act, always the person. I sighed for myself, feeling worthless. The 3rd day after my death, my body was swept far, curious fish nibbled my skin. They'd been hungry. Serrated teeth tore puffy flesh, my soul shuddered, growing translucent. Soren sat by Rosalie's fore, peeling an apple. Day 4, the cloudburst finally ceased. Fishtails slapped my face, waterweeds tangled my hair. I didn't know where I was, only distant church bells. Rosalie pouted that pills were bitter and demanded candied chestnuts. Soren drove to buy them. 5th day. 6th day. 7th day, Rosalie was discharged. Let me take you home, Soren said after signing papers. I'm not going back. She bit her lip. Soren, can I stay at your place? I'm married. His hands tightened on the wheel. Jackass, you remembered you have a wife? I drifted in the back seat, laughing bitterly. Stop pretending. Take her home, I'm dead. Convenient space cleared. I know. Just one night, I'll leave tomorrow. Tears shimmered, she looked fragile. All right. After a pause he agreed. I followed them to Sterling Manor. He told the housekeeper to ready the guest room. Calls from Young kept coming. He'd ignored work for days. Like a butterfly, Rosalie fluttered through my home. Soren, may I look around? Busy on the phone, he nodded. She climbed the stairs and stopped at the bedroom door. I watched her turn the handle and step inside. Disgust surged. Hatred I'd buried flared as she surveyed my dresser, my closet, the velvet quilt, her fingers trailing. I screamed myself hoarse. Get out. Get out. Don't touch my things. No one heard. Exhausted, I floated to the sofa and sat the afternoon away. Crystal vase, dewy roses. Chin in hand, I stared blankly. So tired. Still, I sensed I'd soon be going home. I only hope Mom and Dad won't grieve too hard. Last call, they'd laughed that Soren and I should travel, take our time, no rush back. But I can't come back. 11. Soren skipped dinner and stayed in the sanctum. The lamp burned until deep in the night. I drifted straight through the door. It was my first time inside, in spirit form. He never let anyone into his workspace. At work he was meticulous, rigid, old school. Just like he never let me slip gummy bears into his suit pocket, he wouldn't allow a single non-business object in the sanctum. I understood, and I'd always respected the rule. Now I only wished I hadn't. If I'd pushed this door earlier, I'd probably be on my second marriage by now. The room was huge, every file and book lined up with military precision. On one corner of the desk lay a book Byron, pages yellowed with age. Beside the floor lamp hung a dress. A breathtaking ballet costume, white strapless silk, hem flared and stitched with small lustrous pearls. A pale pink gauze ribbon circled the waist, knotted in a loose, drooping bow. Like a bud waiting to sway open. Whose it was needed no explanation. Liar. I let out a heavy, ragged sigh. All the years he'd kept silent about Rosalie, he'd still displayed her things in here. Unexpectedly, Soren wasn't working. He leaned back, fingertips drumming the desktop, eyes closed, lost in thought. Probably rehearsing how to ask me for a divorce. I sneered and bounced furiously over his head. I couldn't wait. Quinhee pulled open the right-hand drawer and lifted out a small square box. Inside lay a delicate bunny hair tie. Another keepsake of Rosalie's. Knock knock knock. Soren rose and opened the door halfway. Your light was still on, Rosalie said, wearing nothing but thin silk pajamas, mischief sparkling in her blink. What is it? She hesitated. Are you still mad that I ignored you after Ellis when I left for Paris? That's ancient history. Since the first chaotic day, Soren's reactions to her had grown flatter and colder. I shot him a puzzled glance. After a short silence, Rosalie peered past his shoulder and caught sight of the tutu. Oh, that skirt! She cried in surprise. She slipped inside uninvited, noticed the poetry book and the hair tie. You kept them all. Soren, you still care. Her gloom vanished, she lifted her face, triumphant and giddy. I sucked in a breath and almost clapped for the two of them. Mystery solved. Next came the reunion kiss. I looked at Soren, waiting with Rosalie for his answer. Stop pretending to be remote. He didn't speak. Head lowered, lashes screening his eyes. Rosalie stepped closer, rose on her toes, aimed for his mouth. The scent of roses swirled, Soren didn't flinch. Her soft, inviting lips were a breath away when he jolted awake, pupils shrinking, face jerking aside as he retreated. Wrong. What's wrong? When he lifted his head, the knot between his brows had loosened, his gaze clear. Rosalie, I stopped loving you years ago. The wild heartbeat of 17 is long gone. The person I love now is my wife. I love her deeply. Under the gentle lamplight his lips drew a cold, steady line, voice flat as glass. Then why keep her things? Rosalie laughed as if she'd heard the world's best joke, disbelief scrawled across her pretty face. I kept them, yes, first because I still had feelings. He admitted it without hesitation. I still remember the way your parents looked at me like trash. They despised me, said a loser like me would stay poor and pathetic his whole life. After you transferred, I studied like a maniac, not for you, for my own pride. I saw you cozying up to some guy at your new school, turned out you were only playing with me. That boy had money, Emery. After graduation you two flew overseas together. I started my company in college because I refused to lose. I wanted you to regret choosing him and leaving me. For years that bitterness was the coal in my engine. Every time I glanced at these souvenirs I didn't see memories, I saw your parents' sneers and your icy back turned on me. They reminded me to grow stronger, to never be looked down on or toyed with again. His tone was as thin as wind. So you knew everything, Rosalie whispered. Shame flickered and vanished in her eyes. When I'd made it, your call stirred the old embers, the sparks flared and I lost my head. I played the gentle ex, watched you act cute and vaguely remorseful, yet felt no triumph, only growing irritation. The split inside me was torture. Then why keep acting? Why babysit me these days? Rosalie's eyes widened, tears spilling, face bloodless, voice shaking. You once helped me when I was broke, paid my lunch debt. Rosalie, tomorrow morning you leave. We're even. Standing alone, he looked down at her, eyes black ice. Rosalie couldn't bear another second, she inched toward the door. On the threshold she glanced back. I remember you asked if I was the one who paid your account. Usually you ignored me, that day you actually spoke. I was surprised, then I just said yes. Funny thing, I always loved that handwriting font. Since someone wanted to do a good deed anonymously, why waste the chance? She smoothed her hair, a mocking smile curving her lips. Soren, your real benefactor wasn't me, you guessed wrong. Only an idiot would slave for nothing. And I'm no idiot. 12. Her words slammed into him like iron spikes, nailing him to the floor. Lily. After a deathly pause, her name slipped through his teeth. So my hunch was right, I really was that idiot. I sighed. All his sudden interest, the chase, had started over cafeteria money. He pursued her because bruised pride demanded it. At that moment the taste in my mouth was indescribable. But wrong is wrong. Too late, nothing can be rewritten now. I have no real regrets. Even if he'd known I paid the bill back then, what difference would it make? Truthfully, he was always ringed by prettier girls. High school me was ordinary, invisible. He might have thanked me, but he wouldn't necessarily have loved me. Just like when I gave him his first ever birthday present special, yes. He was moved, but nothing more. In this world plenty of stories still end the same no matter who the actors are. Moonlight slid through the gap in the curtains and drew a thin silver line across the rug. Soren returned to the bedroom and opened WhatsApp. He stroked the screen, then typed. Can I pick you up? The glow died. 10 minutes later, still no answer. Lily, please come home first. Nothing. Restless, he pulled a pack of cigarettes from the nightstand and lit one. Blue-white smoke veiled his eyes as he dialed my number. Beep, beep, beep. Cold voicemail greeted him. He switched back to WhatsApp. Lily, I was wrong. Let me explain, just call me back, okay? Dylan. Dawn paled the sky. Soren's phone rang. The call was from overseas. Not me. The police. Informing him I was dead. You've got the wrong person. He laughed weakly, voice trembling. Sir, we're certain. We'll also contact the victim's parents. Please come as soon as possible. He hung up and stumbled toward the airport, dialing and texting nonstop. Lily, you're just mad at me, right? It's my fault, I shouldn't have left you. I lost my mind. Don't scare me, reply, please. I'm sorry, one call, just one, okay? All the way until touchdown the messages kept flying. They sank like stones, no echo. A waiting officer met him at arrivals. You're mistaken. I'll sue, Soren said calmly, climbing into the car. The cruiser screamed through the streets to the station. Inside an interview room the officer paused, then gave a terse summary. Mr. Sterling, it grieves me to report. Your wife, Dylan, has been murdered. One robber was caught yesterday. While searching his flat we found a severed finger in the trash. Under questioning he admitted that 7 days ago, during the afternoon cloudburst, your wife took a cab to the airport and was abducted by the driver. He called 2 drunk accomplices. They stripped her of valuables. Her ring wouldn't slide off, so they cut off her finger. They strangled her and, under cover of night and rain, dumped the body in the Blackwater. Ring, phone, bag all sold. Here are photos of the finger and the cloth it was wrapped in. The fabric was torn from her skirt. Physical evidence will follow. He placed 2 photographs on the table. The severed joint was hideous. The scrap of hem was blotched with dried brown blood. Soren's fingers whitened around the prints, shaking violently. His tall frame swayed. He braced both hands on the table to stay upright, the mask of composure cracking. Still he denied it. It isn't her. You've mixed things up. She's hiding because she's angry. This isn't her. A thin film of tears glazed his lower lashes. His breathing rasped like a final, festering death rattle, hopeless, spent. The officer's eyes held pity. Storms kept people indoors. No one noticed the disappearance in time. By the time we were alerted, days of torrential rain and branching channels had carried the remains downstream. Calculations indicate the corpse was swept out to sea. Recovery is virtually impossible. While strangling her, the criminals filmed a short video. He opened the laptop and pressed play. The screen filled with my pale, eerily calm face. When terror peaks, nothing is frightening anymore. The criminal stepped back so the camera framed my whole body. My finger had been severed, the floor and my dress were soaked in great dark lakes of blood. My wrists and ankles were bound. "Are you married?" the criminal asked, curious. "If you hadn't kidnapped me, I'd already be divorced." I was so weak from blood loss my voice barely carried. "Why?" "He dumped me and ran back to his ex." "My God, poor lady." Jeering laughter ricocheted around the room, the drunken criminals howled. "Anything you want to say before you die?" "No." "Not even a last word to your cheating husband?" Someone looped a rope around my neck. I had nothing to say. Yet saying nothing felt like letting them win. After all, this would be my last sentence on earth. I stared straight into the lens and whispered, "Soren, if I could start over, I'd stay far, far away from you." Ding dong, Taylor. A savage grin split the room, the rope snapped taut, the image lurched. Who was cheering, who was weeping? Bang! "I'll kill them. I'll kill them all." Soren slammed his fists against the laptop like a cornered animal, scarlet eyes raw with anguish. "Mr. Sterling, please calm down." People poured in, forcing the frenzied Soren back. Grief hit like a tsunami, he clutched his chest and doubled over, barely able to stand. An officer knocked to deliver evidence, but seeing Soren's state, waved the bag away. "Give it back. Give it to me." Soren wrenched free and lunged. He snatched one of the plastic sacks. "Lily. Lily." Crushed scraps of my stained dress in his hands, he wailed like a child who's broken the priceless and only now understands. Cops came and went, muttering under their breath. I watched without a flicker of feeling. Mom and Dad arrived. They were led to another room. Mom took one look at the footage and collapsed, screaming, then fainted and was rushed to the ER. Dad cried like a boy until his voice cracked. Supported on either side, he shuffled out and slapped Soren across the face. 7 whole days only then did you text my daughter. Now even her body is lost. This is how you looked after Dylan? This is how you protected my little girl." Soren stood motionless, cheek flaming, gaze shattered. They never found my body. The criminals were sentenced. In that country robbery murder earns the gallows. Half a month later Mom and Dad cremated my severed finger, sealed the ash in a tiny porcelain jar, and flew home without telling Soren. The jet carved a long white scar across the sky. Hours later it touched down. I was back on native soil. Fallen leaf returning to root home at last. Sunlight poured like warm honey, I felt lighter than wind. I brushed a ghost kiss to Mom and Dad's cheeks, bidding them goodbye. Mom, Dad, live well. 3 days later the local paper carried a headline. Sterling Corporation CEO Soren wrists slashed. Dead on arrival. Supplement. Consciousness returned, and Dylan's first sound was a thunderous clang. A single desk skidded meters and crashed into another. Table for 2. Beyond the glass windows, apricot pink sunset. The handsome boy grabbed her wrist without ceremony and yanked the still-dazed girl into the seat. From now on I'm your desk mate. Don't cry anymore. It was all painfully familiar. Dylan stared at Soren, eyes puffy and blank. She was dead then dumped back into the afternoon of senior year. Reality snapped into focus, her face cooled, remoteness icing her features. Without a word she stood, dragged her desk back to its original spot. So I'm not good enough to sit beside? Soren watched her move away, gave a cold laugh. Dylan answered with silence, head down, tidying books as if he were thin air. Well, damn, he'd offered charity and been slapped with disdain. Soren's pride smarted. Hey, I'm talking to you. He stalked over and grabbed her wrist. The instant his heat touched her skin she flung him off like something foul. Don't touch me. Her glare could have cut glass. Once, that touch had quickened her pulse, now it only sickened her. Memories of hovering postmortem were foggy, Yet one fact sliced through Soren had abandoned her for another woman. Disgusting. This life, she'd keep her distance. She tore a wet wipe from her bag and scrubbed the place he'd touched. Swollen eyes betrayed raw loathing. Soren froze, slack with bewilderment. What did I ever do to you? He honestly didn't know. Calm again, Dylan arranged her books and opened notes. Riley, she'd forgotten most of high school math, she needed to claw it back fast. Soren loitered, utterly ignored. 1 week later he cracked. Why wouldn't she even look at him? Because he'd kicked her desk? Because he'd held her wrist too hard? Seriously? Restless, he snuck a cigarette at break. When he returned, a boy in the front row was leaning close, whispering questions. Dylan answered gently, heads almost touching. A flare of black jealousy ignited. He strode over and yanked his chair. The screech hushed the entire classroom. Rabbit, what the hell did I do? He braced his hands on the desk, breathing hard, demanding an answer. Cameron. She laid down her pen, met his eyes, and spoke softly. Why call me Rabbit? She's finally talking. Your eyes were red from crying that day. A grin started then died. I hate nicknames. Say it again and I report you. It was the longest sentence she'd ever given him, delivered in ice. His heart twisted. Why do you hate me so much? He murmured, light fading from his eyes. They had never even spoken before today, yet her loathing was absolute just as his sudden obsession was. Midterm arrived, teachers graded overnight. Thanks to a month of cramming, Dylan shot from the middle to fifth in class. The back row exile no longer fit her. Without being asked, the teacher moved her to the window seat thrown in the front row. Bag swung, desk lifted, she left without a backward glance. Soren sat propped on one elbow, tapping the tabletop, staring at the back of her head through the crowd. Soren, you've looked dead all week, Jace said, sauntering in. Drop it. His lashes drooped, hiding loss. Bro, you've got it bad. Do something. Jace rattled off plans. 2 days later, Soren planted himself beside her with an English textbook. Class rep, could you explain this passage? Busy. Ask the study rep. You were just chatting. Now I'm busy. Scowling, he retreated only to return again and again. How'd you pronounce these? He leaned on the sill, pointing. She treated him like wallpaper. He paced off, then doubled back, bending to eye level. Today's my birthday. Her pen paused, she flicked him a glance. So what? The girl wore a pale pink pullover, her loose ponytail knotted high so that the ends brushed the nape of her slender, porcelain neck. She stood half-turned to the sunset, dusk outlined her silhouette, even the strands on the crown of her head glinting like soft gold. Yet the eyes she lifted to him held no warmth, only ice and open loathing. So, could you please just look at me? The rest of the sentence looped around her tongue and finally died there. Soren lowered his gaze, hiding the raw hurt, and after a moment his thin lips curled in a cold smirk. So tonight I'm skipping class to go have fun. He lifted his chin, defiance blazing, tossed out the line, and walked away. Lily, aren't you scared you'll piss Soren off? Someone nearby asked Dylan. Everyone was terrified of Soren, nobody expected Dylan to be this fearless, to never give him a pleasant face. Why would I be scared? Back on campus, all she wanted was to study in peace. However untouchable Soren acted, she wasn't frightened. Don't you know his reputation? He's the dash. Before the word King Bully could leave the speaker's mouth, Dylan nodded, I know. A total dumbass. The people around them. After a few weekly tests, Dylan's grades climbed to first place. She refused to grow complacent, arrived earliest, left latest, every single day. On Christmas evening, Dylan packed up as usual after evening self-study and headed home. When she reached the deserted open-air bike rack, she found a gift box sitting in her front basket. She pulled off her gloves, opened it, and uncovered a snow globe cottage inside. A log cabin with a crackling hearth, a little boy munching snacks, and an unremarkable white rabbit. Like it? Tonight I'm playing Santa handing out gifts. Soren stepped from the shadows, star-flecked moonlight dancing in his eyes. Who knew how long he'd waited in the bitter wind? His nose was crimson. Look closer, there's another rabbit on the sofa, isn't it super dash? Dylan, why are you crying? The words broke off as Soren's face changed. He saw the girl wrapped to her eyes, silent tears slipping down. The torrent soaked her mask, blooming into dark patches. I just gave you a tiny present, no need to cry, right? I don't have tissues, so, wanna borrow my sleeve? He fumbled through his pockets, finding nothing. He almost reached to wipe her cheeks himself. But he didn't dare touch her, only lifted an awkward arm and offered his cuff. The moon looked bruised, only a few stars hung on. Dylan blinked her soaked lashes, set the globe on the ground, exhaled, exhaustion etched across her face, voice thick with congestion. Soren, listen up. You're a pile of sludge, worthless, hopeless, full of yourself. Every time I smell cigarettes on you, I want to puke. Do me a favor and stop bothering me. I hate you. In the hush of night, every syllable she fired drove straight into Soren's heart like a blade. His breath froze, a sharp ache exploded from his chest to his fingertips. His throat clogged, cold seeped into his bones. So that was how she saw him, filth. Dylan wheeled her bike around him and left. The winter night was cold and damp. Soren stood frozen for ages, then bent and picked up the abandoned globe, eyes blood red. I thought you'd like it. After that night, he never sought Dylan again. Stung by her words, he buckled down, stopped cutting class, stopped dozing through lessons, rebuilt from the ground up. Over winter break he studied at home so diligently that he found his grandpa collapsed in time to rush him to the hospital and save his life. When the new term opened, Soren worked even harder, surging from the bottom ranks to the middle. His grandfather's illness had swallowed their savings, his lunch fees were a week overdue until the homeroom teacher paid out of pocket. This life, there would be no stammering girl telling white lies so she could secretly cover the bill. Girls still haunted the corridor with love letters. Dylan reviewed notes on the rooftop at noon and happened to witness Rosalie confessing to Soren. A beautiful girl proclaiming her feelings without the slightest awkwardness. Soren's gaze was unreadable, absent-mindedness clouding his features. A picture-perfect rom-com scene. Dylan tactfully snapped her book shut and left. She'd barely reached the stairwell when Soren caught up. I don't like her. He brushed past her on the steps, tossing the sentence behind him. None of my business. Dylan shrugged and reopened her textbook. Where was I again? Gym class. The teacher shouted free activity, the boys cheered and sprinted to the basketball court, while Dylan and a friend grabbed badminton rackets. Her ponytail was loose, after a few rallies the elastic vanished. She glanced around, couldn't spot it, and gave up. She kept a spare on her wrist. Gathering her hair again, she sauntered off with her friend. When Dylan was out of sight across the yard, Soren abandoned his own game, ignoring teammates' calls. He jogged over, bent low, and combed the ground until he found the thin black band plane, unadorned, clean, just like her. He lifted it to his nose, breathed in the faintest trace of her shampoo, and tucked it gently into his pocket. They didn't speak again until senior year winter break. Bundled like a bear, Dylan sneaked out after curfew for streetside Odin. Snow had fallen all day, thick layers crunched beneath her slippers. Savoring the snack on the sidewalk, she couldn't bring it home. She dumped the empty cup and padded homeward in happy dog-shaped slippers, and froze. On the corner stood Soren, the dessert shop light washing over the sharp, graceful lines of his profile. Black down jacket, straight nose, eyes softer than she remembered. Need something? She asked flatly. Soren's throat locked, no words came. He felt hopeless, like an idiot, a madman. He'd studied like a machine to earn the right to speak to her again. Now he was a model student, and still he couldn't open his mouth. Whatever. She stepped around him. Wait. He couldn't help calling after her. What? She looked back. Dylan, my grades are solid now. I don't smoke, don't fight. His voice cracked, eyes stung. So, could you stop hating me? Be a little nicer to me? Just a tiny bit, that's enough. He fought to keep the tremor from his words, sounding wrecked, like a stray begging for scraps. Sorry. The answer came after a long beat. Months into her second life, she was calmer. The previous life's debt shouldn't be pinned on this boy, she knew. He'd shed his thorns, worked obsessively, cracked the top 5 in class, teachers sang his praises. Yet she couldn't pretend. Remnants of despair still lived in her bones. The terror of abandonment, of robbery. Of fish nibbling her corpse, of a blade severing her finger. They could only be strangers who exchanged the occasional greeting. Another stretch of silence. Okay. Head home, it's freezing. Soren smiled, eyes bloodshot. He watched the puffy figure recede, heart gaping wide to the winter wind. You won't give me even one chance. Little rabbit, your heart is merciless. June, Ellis. Scores were out, the class returned for diplomas and a Letterman jacket swap. Scribble blessings on your jacket, toss it into a pile, draw one at random. On the one Dylan picked, a line in forceful handwriting read. May you know only joy, peace, and care for years. Here you aced the tests. Soren strolled over, jacket slung over an arm, expression bright and open. Willow fronds brushed above them, the boy was clean, sharpness gone, skin porcelain in the sun. Pretty well, Dylan answered. Graduation, can I hug you? He asked haltingly. Sure. She nodded, decisive. The white t-shirt smelled of fresh detergent, the acrid cigarette stench had vanished. He drew her in gently, then tighter, as though she were something precious he'd lost and found again, so tight her ribs hurt. Dylan, I dreamed a few nights ago. He whispered, chin in the hollow of her neck, voice unsteady. In the dream we were desk mates for 2 years, then we married. But I dumped you for another woman. You died. Wet warmth seeped into her skin. After a pause she pulled free and said evenly, it was just a dream. Yeah, only a dream. He hugged her jacket, eyes scarlet, throat gravelly. He curved a smile, but while smiling he cried, hot drops spilling, splashing onto the fabric, blotting the 5 simple words Dylan had written. May all your wishes come true. But the one thing he wished for, he could never have. He had lost her forever. Lily, you once said that if you had another life, you'd keep well away from me. You have kept your word. Goodbye. Dylan raised a hand in polite farewell. Joy and sorrow, the twin chords of youth, dissolved beneath the cicada's roar. She never looked back. Long strands of hair danced in the late breeze as she melted into a dusk of peach and gold. Roses will wilt, the sun sinks into wild grass. People who miss their moment must still exit the stage. End.